featuring a series of partner events which will highlight your favorite products, manufacturers, artists, and more. Join us every day at 2 o'clock p.m. from November 1st through December 20th for exciting interviews, live audience Q&As, and a chance to win special prizes. Head over to the Fishman YouTube channel now to subscribe and set your notifications so you don't miss out on any of these events.
Time to start the battle, make my way, shifting through the shadows. But if I know you, you're moving where the sun goes. Take my hand, lead me and I'll follow. But it's all on you this time. I'm giving it up when I'm on the line. Let's give this a life. Let's give this a life. Let's give this a life. Let's give this a life.
Hi, my name is Aspen Jacobson, and I'm a 15-year-old singer-songwriter from Michigan.
It's an open door, but if this door is just another gash.
I've been using the Fishman Loudbox Mini ever since I started performing. It's so helpful for me because it's small but mighty, just like me. It has 2 channels, one for my mic and then another one for any acoustic instrument that I want to play.
I'll raise the white flag to be with you.
I use it for coffee shop gigs, busking, or even just jamming with friends. I'm a multi-instrumentalist, so this amp works perfect with ukulele, guitar, mandolin. I'm learning fiddle right now on it. If you play acoustic instruments like me, then this is the amp for you.
Don't go.
Hey everyone out there, this is Ken Susi. This is the first Fishman Partnership Series. You may be asking yourself, what is the Fishman Partnership Series? Well, Fishman is going live every day for the next 2 months, and we're going to be featuring a lot of our great partners and talking about all the great products that we make, all the great products that they make. Also, all the work, too, that goes on behind the scenes as far as how people are creating products and as well as, supporting Fishman at the same time. But please do us a favor. Hop in at any point. Ask us some questions. We have a lot of great people over here. Look right here. People saying, hey, good morning. How you doing, Sky? Duncan over here saying hey as well. Guys, you're more than welcome to jump in on this feed and just ask any question that you want. We have some really great people, so do us a favor. Head over to our YouTube page, the Fishman YouTube page. Click the like and subscribe button, set your notifications, and you won't miss out on any of these great events. Also, if you have any questions about our products, you can go head over to www.fishman.com. This is a shot of our website. You have all these great things. You can check out all the support pages and all the products and all the artists that support our products and all the great guitars that they are featuring. So anyway, without further ado, we have Mr. Rob Ketch from Fishman over here. Mr. Rob Ketch is the Senior VP of Sales. Rob, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
He's a man of very few words. But guys, thank you so much for joining today. As you can tell, we are broadcasting live across the Fishman YouTube, which I just asked you to subscribe to, the Fishman Facebook, and also Cordoba. Why Cordoba? Because today we have a very special guest, Mr. Josh Chapman. How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks again for having me, guys.
Thank you very much for being here. Obviously, it's great. You're the product manager over there. Why don't you tell us about, I understand that you're a builder and a player as well. So talk about your musical journey and how you got, basically your history.
Yeah, sure. You know, the great thing about an industry like ours, based around guitar, is, it usually starts from passion. And my story is not much different there. I actually started, playing guitar right around middle school age, all the way through high school. And about halfway through high school, I really knew for sure that guitar was going to be my career choice. I just also realized that where I was based out of Minnesota, probably not going to end up being a studio musician in California like I dreamed. So kind of taking the realism approach to that, I actually looked more into development and repair. There's actually a great program in Minnesota at Southeast Technical College where they actually cover designing and repairing guitars. So I attended a 2-year program there. After that, I actually ended up moving out to California and working for Guitar Center in their repairs department. I actually worked at their corporate office there for a few years, helping to do training as far as repairs go, helping out guys in the field. After that, I really wanted to pursue, my dream of being in the development side of things. So I ended up leaving Guitar Center to start at Cordoba Music Group, where I actually started in our guild factory here in Oxnard. So I worked there for about 1.5 years, ended up implementing some changes, working with our management of the factory to kind of get it up and running, caught a few eyes when I was doing that kind of system implementation. They pulled me aside and said, hey, what do you want to be doing for this company? And that, opened the door for me into my dream job where I am now, working in development. So I am a player myself, play both nylon and steel string guitars. But really, what gets me going is primarily working on the design side of instruments and seeing what we can do to push the envelope,
That's amazing. I absolutely love that story because it resonates with so many people. There's so many great people that work at Fishman that were once musicians and now they're on the other side of the fence and they're working behind the scenes. And can you tell us a little bit about, actually real quick before we ask you another question, Scotty Reed is saying, been looking at some classical Cordobas, C7 cutaways, great timing. So you have some fans out here that are already peeping products.
Glad to hear.
So with what you just said, I mean, obviously you've had an amazing journey. Can you tell the audience a little bit about how you got into the music industry and into your incredible position at Cordoba?
Yeah, sure. A lot of it really was, a little bit of good timing, but a lot of it was just drive, and it's you'll hear that from anyone, whether you're on the artist side, whether you're on the development side. It's really about drive and subscribing yourself to that passion. After I learned how to work on instruments, immediately I would go home those same days and I would be working on rewiring guitars myself outside of my class. It's really about making sure that is what you want to do and pursuing it to the fullest, not just clocking in, doing your time, and then leaving. And that's the beautiful thing about a career like this in musical instrument development and design, is that you do have that dream job where you're working and doing what you want to do, where what you're doing in your free time can directly help you with what you're doing for your career. For instance, I like to work on effects pedals and amps and everything outside of work, where I primarily work on guitars. But any of that passion in that same industry just feeds off itself. And so when we're later talking about a preamp system, as I am with Fishman quite frequently, that knowledge kind of crosses over. And as far as actually getting into it and getting into the industry, one thing that helps a lot is going to be having some business knowledge, because a lot of people love the passion side, but you've got to kind of combine that with the business knowledge. And so that's where I did, on top of all of that, playing and going to the technical school, I did actually also work on getting my business degree as well. So it's the combination of those two things, that passion and being able to kind of speak, business really will get you where you want to be.
It's really funny too. I'm a professional musician. I play in a heavy metal band called Unearth, but I went to school. Everyone always asks me what school I went to for music, but I'm like, I didn't go to school for music. I went for UMass for business and marketing. But man, I gotta say, like, crunching numbers in the back of the van with merch and all that other stuff, it really helps later on in life. Now working for Fishman, you utilize all those tools. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting call out there too. When you say I stopped music classes in high school, as far as I play frequently, but I knew at that point that I wanted music to kind of be my escape and my fun side of things, and then generating what makes the music to be my main time goal. So I kind of actively was like, I'll learn scales and all of that outside of a formal education and work my way back around into that.
Yeah, scales don't always pay the bills. Well, let me get people a little bit familiar with Rob Ketch. Rob Ketch is just so everyone knows, is my favorite guitar player at Fishman. He's a total shredder. Rob, why don't you tell us about your musical background and also how you got to Fishman?
Absolutely. Well, I started playing at a very young age. I was into visual art, drawing and painting, and so the band Kiss from way back in the 70s, that strong visual image sort of drew me in, and then I got connected to the music, started playing drums. My parents hated that because it was really hard to enjoy the baseball game in the afternoon with a kid practicing the snare drum. So they pointed to a little nylon string guitar in the corner and said, hey, why don't you learn how to play that? It looks much quieter than the drums. So I jumped into guitar, got very into it. From the rock and roll side, I moved to Manhattan. I studied classical guitar for a little bit at the American Institute of Guitar. Once again, it was sort of a mandated thing because it was the only lesson that I could safely walk to by myself in the city. And they were strictly a classical guitar program. So even though I was excited about rock and roll, I got a few fundamentals of guitar playing in there. So I continued to play in bands, write original music, and came to Fishman starting to work in the sales department. I had done guitar clinics before for a guitar manufacturer, and one of the reps that handled that guitar brand also was representing Fishman at the time and got me the position here at Fishman. And 26 years later, still doing the thing. So right now, my main focus at Fishman, my title is Senior Vice President of Sales. I focus extensively on the OEM side of our business, working with great guitar brands like Cordoba to make sure that when they've got a great instrument, that we've got great electronics and a good answer for them for that.
Nice. Don't let Rob Ketch fool you. He knows all the licks. He's very, very good. But anyway, so let's go over here to our questions, guys. Now that you're familiar with us, we want to get familiar with you. Please pop in and ask any question that you want. We have Josh here from Cordoba Guitars, Rob Ketch, and myself. But we already have Duncan here saying, "Hey, Josh." So you may know Duncan, but he's popping in. And he says, "Awesome, I'm doing my music entrepreneur master's degree." And hey, Rob, so you either know everybody here, but that's awesome. It seems like he's on the same path as us. So let me ask you a quick question, Josh. So going back in the history, Cordoba founder Tim McClouchy is a player, collector, and a high-end dealer of fine nylon string instruments. What was Tim's vision for Cordoba, and how is it different than other classical guitars?
Yeah, definitely. And first, let me just make a quick comment here. It's so phenomenal to be, especially in a passion industry like this, and have our CEO be so involved in what we do. Not only is he involved in the business, but he's also involved in the playing and design side of things as well. So he has a strong presence here when it comes to product development as well, which, you really can't ask for something better than that. When it comes to passion. But yeah, when Tim initially started the company, he first had Guitar Salon International, which was a business for buying and selling very expensive, very nice, multi tens of thousands of dollar guitars. And after running that business for a little bit, he really realized that he was missing a segment of people, more so that they weren't getting the chance and opportunity to play the great guitars that he had. And so when he saw the vision of Cordoba, it was taking his fine knowledge of builders. I mean, he'd spent tens of years with some of the most expensive, some of the fanciest and most famous builders, Hauser, Torres, their original models. And he took that knowledge of these instruments and wanted to bring that down to a level that a regular player could have, or even an entry-level player could have. And so when he looked at the vision for Cordoba, it wasn't just making great guitars, it was making great guitars that can reach the world and that could be in anyone's hands. And as you look at that versus, other nylon string, the vision for these models is one of the things that Tim did very quickly and that Cordoba has done is separate the term classical guitar from nylon string guitar. And that really speaks to the foundation of the vision of Cordoba. And that's that a nylon string guitar is not just for classical music. We have models that are, specifically designed with that intent in mind. But at the same time, we have models that are speaking more towards players who use steel string or electric guitars. And it's really, the vision is not just to make classical guitars or nylon string guitars for classical players, but to bring nylon string guitars to everyone and really educate and show that a nylon string guitar has capabilities and sounds that you just can't get out of a steel string guitar. And really his vision was to take the master knowledge that he gathered of all these years working with these really fine guitars and get that to the masses to show them that, hey, there's so much more you can do with nylon. Nylon isn't just for classical. It isn't, just to be in recitals. It could be anywhere. It could be on any stage.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We have more questions coming in here. Duncan is asking again, do you guys make the electronics for my GK Pro? Can you explain the phase and notch controls? I'm gonna push that question over to the man that knows, Mr. Rob Ketch. Rob, can you answer that question?
I sure can, Ken. The phase switch on any of the Fishman systems is designed to be sort of your first line of defense against feedback in a live performance situation. So when you get your guitar, you show up into the room, you plug in, you've got the monitor system, you want to set your phase so you're getting the fullest possible sound without feedback or artifacts. If it gets really, really loud on stage, sometimes people will intentionally put the guitar out of phase to control feedback. But for fullest, most natural sound, you generally want to be in phase. And it does change depending on your distance to the speaker. So really just at the beginning of every gig, tune it in by ear, play some low open chords so you can really hear the low end content, toggle that switch, leave it in the spot that it sounds best and is getting the sound that you're looking for. Regarding the notch control, that is a very, very narrow, very deep and steep parametric notch. So that would be your secondary defense against feedback in a live situation. Generally speaking, an acoustic guitar, one of the first frequencies to feedback is going to be the primary resonance coming from the body. You can find that frequency by turning the notch control. So as you spin it, it's very, very easy. You increase the volume until you start to get feedback in the guitar, that first frequency feeding back, and then you slowly dial the notch control. Once you found it, it wipes out the feedback and you're ready to play. I also had one more question, if I can, Ken, for Josh. Josh, thank you for sharing Tim's vision for Cordoba guitars. You mentioned that Cordoba makes often nylon guitars, not just classical guitars, and nylon guitars can be for any number of players. Can you tell us about some of the specific things that you build into the guitars to make the appeal broader and go beyond just what a classical player might be looking for?
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of that comes into really how the guitars play and what we do in the design stages of them. And so as you look at a traditional classical nylon string guitar, one that's meant for classical playing, one of the things you'll notice right off the bat, especially if you're a steel string or electric player, is that the neck itself is pretty large. They do have a larger neck and a larger nut width than nearly all electric guitars and nearly all acoustic guitars. And that really lends itself to the style of playing of a classical guitar. You usually use your fingernails as picks. It gives you a little bit more space to hit those strings. It also gives your fretting hand a bit more room to move around as you're playing a bass line as well as a treble line at the same time, or melody lead line. But what we've done is, as we've looked at taking our nylon string guitars away from just the classical world and more of a universal world, we've actually attacked kind of those mindsets or preconceived notions of a nylon string guitar to make them a bit more at home for a steel string player. And the main way we did that first is by making the nut width smaller. And for those of you who aren't quite sure, right off the bat, a nut is that little piece at the bottom of the headstock, usually made out of bone, that holds all your strings in place. And the wider that's going to be, the more wide your neck feels as you're trying to fret a chord. Once you start to narrow that nut width, your fingers feel a bit closer together and the strings get a bit closer together. So it kind of lends itself to a bit easier bar chords, which you see more in steel string guitar playing or electric guitar playing. And so when we looked at the nylon string guitar and bringing it to someone who's more at home on a steel string guitar or an electric guitar with these smaller necks, first thing we did was we actually shrunk down the nut just a little bit. So on a traditional classical guitar, you're gonna have a 50 millimeter nut that's right, or 52 millimeter nut that's right around 2 inches in width, as opposed to a usual steel string guitar, which is going to be around 1.75 inches in width. We brought ours down to 1 7/8 or 48 millimeters. And so that's just a little bit wider than what you'd normally find on a steel string guitar, but it's a lot more comfortable for the hands of someone who's used to playing on a steel string guitar. I can actually speak from experience here. When I first picked up a classical guitar when I was learning guitar, I kind of veered myself away a little bit as I noticed that I wasn't picking it up as often as my steel string guitars, purely just because when I picked up the guitar, it just didn't feel quite like home. That wasn't until I grabbed one of these fusion guitars. That smaller nut width, right off the bat, it just feels a little bit more familiar to your fingers. The second thing that we did that really, it sounds minute, but it changes a lot of how the guitar feels, is we added a radius to that fretboard. Normally a traditional classical guitar meant for, or a nylon guitar meant for classical guitar playing is gonna have a flat fretboard. So right across, no radius to it. And you'll see that spec a lot when you're talking about acoustic guitars, electric guitars, you'll hear radius as a fretboard. And all that is just an arc that's added to the surface of the fretboard. And what that does is it kind of helps your hands as you're going to make a fretted chord, particularly bar chords. It really helps your hand kind of come around into that shape. So we actually added that radius to the fretboard, again, usually seen on a steel string or a electric guitar neck. That makes it feel a little bit more comfortable. The last thing that we did, really aiming specifically at kind of stepping away from that classical design element of the neck, is we made our necks a little bit thinner. So we do have a fusion line of guitars. Yeah, definitely. The radius makes quite a big difference. If you haven't tried a Cordoba fusion guitar, I highly recommend that you try it. We call them our fusion line. That's any of these guitars that have this neck I'm talking about. And the reason we call it fusion is it's really aimed at fusing the type of music that you play. You know, it's not just, again, it's a nylon string guitar. It's not just for classical, but those key three things is a slightly thinner neck. It's about a 1.5 millimeter thinner than our regular classical guitar neck. The radius fretboard, and then that thinner nut width. All of those together, as a player who normally would play steel string or electric guitar, if you pick up that nylon string guitar, it's going to feel like home to your fingers, which is really combating the feeling that you have a regular classical guitar when you pick that up. You'll notice that there is a very big change in the way it feels, even though aesthetically it doesn't look all that different.
Nice. This might be a little bit of a redundant question because we're definitely moving along with this, but Cordoba is known for incorporating modern improvements and combining them with traditional Spanish tradition. Can you tell us about some of these developments?
Yeah, sure. So really the story of Cordoba, and to kind of, I can roll this back a little bit to Tim McClouchy's story here, is when he looked to build guitars, for the mass market, these nylon string instruments, one of the first things you do is you look at where you can build them. And overseas is really the option if you want to get a guitar in someone's hand for $200, $300. So that is something that he looked at developing very quickly. But when he looked at developing these models, and we're still seeing the benefits of this today, when he looked at developing these lower priced models overseas, he didn't just find factories and say, hey, can you make a guitar? He actually teamed up with world famous luthiers and brought them out to these factories to train on how to build a guitar the traditional Spanish way. So as a result, you have years and years of expertise in building that was given immediately to these factories as they were building even our lower level price of guitars, which is where you'll really see excellence in the tone and the playability of even our lower price guitars. But the traditional nylon building steps are in there. We still use 5 or 7 fan bracing, very delicately braced on all of our models. We still use traditional wood construction, a lot of traditional woods you'll see all across our product line. But where he really started to switch more towards this kind of modern view starts first of all with the truss rod. The majority of nylon string guitars, classical guitars, if you will, outside of Cordoba instruments, a lot of them for the longest time have been built with no truss rod in the neck. And this is due to the physics of the instrument itself. Every steel string or electric guitar is going to have a truss rod because you have so much tension being pulled from those steel strings. Whereas a nylon string guitar has nylon-based strings, which don't provide as much tension, which, especially in the developing years of the guitar, as we all know, it started first with gut and then nylon strings as how it was strung. There wasn't a need for a truss rod because the neck wasn't being pulled so much. A lot of builders use this as a reason to not input one at all. However, from the moment that we started building Cordoba guitars and Tim got into this industry, he said, no, I want to give my players every benefit that a modern guitar has, one of them being a truss rod. And what that allows you to do is over the life of your guitar, you're able to adjust the neck to where it needs to be, rather than taking a pretty common classical design approach and saying, it probably shouldn't need to be adjusted, so we just won't include a truss rod. Past that, as we look towards the modern steps that we've done, the introduction of cutaways on a lot of our models and electronics as well. Fishman was here with us to really help us partner with diving into the electric realm, getting nylon strings on stages as opposed to only in auditoriums, getting them amplified and sounding great. So that's really one of the front runner missions here at Cordoba, is ensuring that our guitars sound good on stage or off stage for a modern musician. And one more kind of subtle thing that we do include that's a more modern touch is going to be our arches on the faceplate of our guitars. A lot of times you'll see in classical or nylon string guitars, kind of the tradition is to keep them blank, Whereas we're very proud of our instruments we make, any price point. And so we want to make sure that the world knows as well as us, if we see it on stage, everyone knows that's a Cordoba guitar that's being used. So we have implemented putting our arches in on all of our headstocks as well. Really just kind of standing by our products and making sure that everyone knows we're proud of the instruments we make.
Nice. Well, Philip has a question over here. Philip Harrison, does Cordoba produce a classical with electronics and a cutaway, not a crossover?
So we actually do have a few. C5CE pops into my head immediately. And I will make one call out that we did decide when it comes to our classical guitars that have electronics in them and a cutaway, they do have a slightly thinner neck. So it's the C5CE, for instance, is not a fusion neck, but the nut width is going to be 50 millimeters instead of 52 millimeters. And that's just ever so slightly shorter than a traditional, just because it gives you a little bit more comfort as you're doing, bar chords or the like.
Nice. Duncan's also asking, I like these quick questions. What's the dark guitar behind Josh? Hopefully it's yours.
This one right here just so happens to be our brand new Fusion 5 in the Sonata Burst.
Ooh, let's flash that on the screen right here.
Boom, there you go.
It's that actual guitar, so go out and buy 10 of them. So Cordoba has done a great job presenting nylon string guitars to the players outside of the traditional classic world. What informed this decision to present the Cordoba instruments to a wider audience?
And really a lot of that is going to be kind of like I spoke to before, the vision of Tim from the really initiating of this company. It was that right off the bat, a nylon string guitar doesn't need to be only for classical. And you see that so frequently, you hear that frequently in music production. I mean, there's tons and tons of hip hop songs that have licks from nylon string guitars on them. And it was really looking at what we were doing as a company and why we were making guitars. You could decide, hey, we're making nylon string guitars. They're known for classical music, and we're just going to make sure that we make the best guitar for classical music and be done. And yeah, that's where we started. But as you look at really our mission and what we want to be doing with guitars, it's getting guitars into everyone's hands and really educating everyone that the nylon string guitar is another instrument. It's another tool for your repertoire. It can hit sounds that you can't quite get on a steel string. It can speak in ways that other instruments can't. And it was really acknowledging that there is that potential in this instrument. It has these voices, and these voices need to be heard. And so rather than focusing on kind of the lane that you could, we wanted to expand out and make sure that everyone, saw the beauty of this instrument.
I believe Rob has something to add to that as well.
Yeah, just a quick question, Josh, regarding some of the artists that play Cordoba guitars. I know very, very early days, I remember the Gypsy Kings being, big proponents of the Cordoba guitars. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the players that are using Cordoba? I know you're not the artist relations manager, but just some of the bright spots from the player side and some of the diverse musical genres that they come from.
Yeah, for sure. We actually have a few players, the Gypsy Kings for one, still using that GK, which actually kind of guided us down a lot of the development we did with Fishman. So good call out there. Glad to hear. We do also have a few other players. I can't think of too many names off the top of my head. Like you said, I'm not the artist relations guy who I'm sure is, oh man, so many. But tons of artists all across the board. I know the guitarist from One Republic. Can't remember. I think it's Zach. I know he's using one of ours.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the interesting things with the Gypsy Kings is that, of course, they're fantastic players, and they also play louder than God live. Right? Those guys are incredibly loud on stage. So I think for both Cordoba and Fishman, they presented a really unique challenge because they wanted a very accurate, very beautiful, detailed acoustic sound, but they needed it at kind of stadium levels for the big rooms that they were playing. And to your point, I remember a lot of work early days with Tim, making sure that those guitars that you designed specifically to work in those environments for them, that our electronics complemented what the guitars were trying to do and supported what the guitars were trying to do. And now that you mention it, it is interesting as you look at the Fusion 5 there for a minute. There's kind of Gypsy King's lineage.
A little bit of DNA there, yeah.
Yeah, all the way right through to that instrument. So I know there's a number of different models, or I believe there's a number of different models in the Fusion series. And the Fusion 5 is one of your most recent ones. Could you share some more specific details about the Fusion 5, the guitar, the electronics, the details in it that are cool? I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, definitely. And first, let me kind of circle back a little bit to your call out with the Gypsy Kings and the design work that was done on our side and your side. Is not only were your electronics that you were working on, designed to work with our instrument, but a lot of the design choices that were made and that are seen today in our Fusions were actually made in of the instrument itself, its dimensions, its size, were actually made to help complement your electronics as well. So it's kind of been really a co-development of where we are today. As we look at the Fusion 5, really the big story on this is going to be the best platform, a great start for any player who plays steel string or electric. That's looking to hop in. This is going to be the entry to our Fusion line. That's why we're so excited about it. This is the lowest price that we're bringing one of our Fusion guitars at. They're going to map in store natural for $430 online, in the Sonata Burst, that dark color we just pulled aside earlier. That's going to be $469. When we look at these guitars, it has the Fusion neck that I was talking about before. So one of the first call outs is because it is a Fusion, it has that neck. And that's going to mean it's got that shorter, the smaller width of the fret of the nut, so it's going to be a bit easier to play. It's going to have a slightly thinner neck all the way around, giving you a little bit more access. It's going to have beautiful bone saddle, bone nut as well. Elegant rosette. As you can see here, the rosette, that's going to be that decoration around the sound hole. We actually pulled a little bit from our steel string counterparts when we were looking at the aesthetic of this guitar to kind of dial it in. And we also added the cutaway and very importantly, the electronics. We teamed up once again with Fishman for the sonotone pickup in here. And we really wanted to make sure that at this price point, we were giving a reliable, great tone to these instruments. And that's the one thing we can always count on with Fishman. No matter what level of guitar we're looking at, those electronics are always going to work. They're always going to sound as they should, and really, really accountable as they can come.
Yeah, actually, I was going to hop in real quick, too. Duncan's asking, what's the name of the dark one again?
It's going to be the Fusion 5 in Sonata Burst.
Yeah. And before I cut away, it's always great to have visual and sonic representations of these guitars. So we actually have prepared, you actually sent us a video. We were prepared to show you guys how this performs and sounds. But before we get to that, Philip has another question. What Fishman amplifier would you pair well with the Fusion 5? Rob, I would say, since we're both on Loudbox.
Yeah, absolutely. Something from the Loudbox series. They're all built to a high level of quality, so it's really a matter of picking the wattage and performance that you need. The Loudbox Mini Bluetooth is a great sounding amplifier, small platform. And then you go up in the range as you need more power for your performance situation. But they're all going to work great and sound really good with that Fusion 5 guitar for sure.
I can actually speak to that as well from the product development side here at Cordoba. The Fishman Mini Loudbox sounds great because
Cool.
We did actually use that in development of this model. So I can speak to that from the Cordoba side.
Awesome.
And they're also Bluetooth, and you can actually bother your friends and take them out of your house.
That's it.
Sing on the street, bother people.
Yeah. Put them out in the window, turn them up loud.
Okay, so real quick, Josh, if you don't mind, we're going to show everyone that how great the Fusion 5 sounds. Guys, enjoy this quick video. It's about a minute long, but this is the Fusion 5s from Cordoba.
Close your eyes and see a Miyazaki picture show. How can you let go of the things that are one tree, cut from the tree of your soul and me. Out of the things that you know, do you know for sure? Oh, the things you know, do you know for sure? Sinking through your dream with the click of remedy, place you can retreat, let yourself be complete. Open up the door to a garden and explore the yellow painted yard, a friend to help your way through the sorrow. All of the things that you know, do you know for sure? All the things you know, do you know for sure? Days are fleeting, heart is beating, everything's a cycle. Shut your eyes, rest your mind and your soul. Shut your eyes, rest your mind and your soul. Close your eyes and see a Miyazaki picture show. How can you let go of the things that are about to unfold?
Hey guys, that was a great video. Just a quick reminder, please do us a favor. If you're new here watching the Fishman Partnership Series, please head over to our YouTube page, click the like and subscribe button. We're going to be doing this every day at 2 o'clock with different OEM partners and or partners in general. But today we have Josh here from Cordoba Guitars. Josh, real quick question. So do you have any tips or suggestions for players that are new to the nylon string world? Is there anything that they need to consider or do differently coming from the steel string, acoustic, or electric background?
Yeah, very good question. And the first thing that I would say is if you point yourself towards the Fusion line, a lot of those considerations of how you would need to change your playing style are kind of addressed. We really set that up as the prime stage for you to pick it up and already feel like home. Some key callouts as far as stylistic playing decisions that you would make as a player when you're picking up a guitar. When we talk about classical guitar playing, a lot of times you think of long nails. Using them as your plectrum or your pick works great on nylon. But a lot of the same finger style techniques that you would use on a steel string work the same, where you use kind of the pad of your finger. So rather than focusing on grabbing with your nail, you'll still get great tone from your nylon if you just focus on using the pad. I'm actually speaking from experience here. I myself am a finger picker on both my electrics and my steel string guitars, and I found myself right at home transferring to a nylon of the Fusion variety. The Fusion neck really felt comfortable for me playing, and I could use a lot of the same techniques I was using with my fingers on that. If you're primarily a pick user, there's nothing wrong with using a pick on a nylon string guitar. Nothing wrong at all. You can definitely do it. I would suggest looking into a heavier gauge pick though. A lot of times you might be using a medium or a light gauge on your steel string, especially for strumming. When you go towards a nylon string guitar, there is a little bit less tension because the strings are made of nylon. And so if you're using a medium or a light gauge pick, you might notice that your strings feel kind of loose or almost hard to grab. That's where I would definitely recommend, pulling a heavier gauge, maybe a wood pick, something that's a little bit more stiff. It'll give you a little bit more of the response you're used to when you're plucking those strings. And really the key about nylon and sitting down and playing it versus a steel string is kind of feeling how it changes the way that you play. Some of the beauty I've found is I've written a lick on a steel string guitar. It sounds really good. And then I've sat down on my nylon string and I play, and I just hear a whole nother side of it. And while my hands are doing the same thing that they were doing on my steel string guitar, I'm now hearing it in a lot more almost vocal tone. A nylon string guitar gives you almost more of a piano or a vocal tone. You can really hear it when you listen to a classical piece or flamenco as they work their way up the fretboard, especially with those leading lines. And you kind of hear it, pierce your heart a little bit. A lot of that comes from the more roundness of those nylon strings and kind of giving you more of a vocal tone. So, if you're finger picking, I'd say kind of look towards using your pads. That should still work just fine, the tips of your fingers. When it comes to picks, maybe transition to a heavier pick when you're picking up your nylon, because it might give you a bit more of an attack that you're used to. And then really one of the things that I'd really recommend most is feel how it changes what you play. Play the same things that you play on your steel string, but now you'll hear a little bit different nuances and maybe even find new ways to expand on those pieces. I know I've definitely kind of flip-flopped. Once I started playing both of them, I flip-flop back and forth where I'll write a piece and I'll say, oh, I wrote this on my nylon. How does that sound in my electric? Okay, I wrote this on my electric. How's that sound on my nylon? And so it's a really kind of fun balance where you kind of let the music speak for itself and you have a different voice for it, with these different instruments.
That's awesome. I actually believe Rob Ketch has something to add to that too. Right, Rob?
I did, Ken. Josh, that's awesome. You spent a lot of time speaking about the nut width in the left hand and that little bit narrower spacing being more comfortable for players coming from steel string or electric guitar. Obviously, one of the primary differences with classical guitar is how the right hand is played. Did you make any adjustments on the Fusion series for the spacing down at the bridge side of the guitar, right? So where your pick and or fingers would interact down towards the bridge. Is the spacing narrower there, or is it the same as a classical guitar?
We actually kept it the same so that you
cool.
still have that spacing for the finger picking, kind of thinking about that mindset. And really the low profile, I mean, even palm muting, if you're going that far as techniques,
Sure.
all work pretty well on a nylon string bridge. So as we were looking at it, there wasn't a lot that needed to be changed. Tied strings, it's pretty soft on your palm if you want to do palm muting.
Yep.
So that is one thing that we determined, we can pretty much leave this where it's at from the original design.
Very cool. Great, thank you.
Well, speaking from the heavy metal world, I'm a heavy metal guitar player. What, for those of us out there that don't know much about nylon string, when selecting a nylon string, what should I be looking for?
Definitely. So one of the first things that I would highly recommend, and you'll see this across all Cordoba guitars, is the weight of the instrument itself. Because nylon string guitars have nylon strings, they have less tension overall built into them than a steel string guitar. And because of that, you can actually build the guitar a little bit lighter. So the various pieces of that instrument, if you compare a nicely made nylon string to a nicely made steel string guitar, you'll notice that things like the braces, the head block, the tail block can be slightly lighter on a nylon string guitar. So that is one thing I would really encourage if you're looking at, kind of shopping around, pick them up and see, all right, is this one much heavier? And what you'll notice almost every time is the weight directly speaks to the voice and the nuances of that guitar. So a slightly heavier guitar is going to end up coming out maybe a little bit more muted, whereas a slightly lighter guitar is going to come out very open and resonant. And that's, going back to the tradition of building classical guitars and where Tim really, in the foundation of this company, Tim McLeod, our CEO, was looking into the future. Was he worked with these factories that we have overseas to make sure that they were building light. You could, just by nature, they would be making a tail block, larger than it needed to be, but working with them to find the extremes of, okay, this is too thin, but what if you just thicken it up a little bit more, and finding those ideal thicknesses where you've got as light as possible, but also strength to endure. So number one thing I would talk about is kind of feeling the weight between the guitars you're comparing. The second thing is going to be the neck itself, how it feels. If you're looking for classical style, you might want that thicker nut width. If you're thinking more, fusion style, or you want to play more types of music, or you're used to a steel string or electric, then a fusion neck would kind of be the way to go. And then past that, it's really going to be looking into the bracing in the woods. We use primarily two different bracing patterns in the majority of construction of nylon string guitars. You're going to have either a 5-fan or a 7-fan bracing. The 5-fan bracing is usually going to be more conductive to lower notes, kind of a rounder tone. It comes into the physics of you've got less braces on the top, so it's a bit easier for that top to move. Whereas when you're looking at the 7-fan, which is a bit more modern, a bit more standard, you've got more braces on the top, so it's going to favor a little bit more balance. You're going to have a bit more overtones, high end there on that. And then when you're looking at woods, it's going to be deciding kind of the tonality of your guitar. When you're buying electric guitar, it kind of depends on the amp that you play in. I'd almost think of the woods of your guitar, acoustic guitar, as that amp. So if you're picking a spruce top, you're going to get a lot more pop, a lot more bite to the tone. It's going to be a bit more nuance, a bit more tonality to it overall as far as high end frequencies. But then when you're looking at a cedar top, you're going to get more of that traditional nylon tone, very warm, very open, a little bit more low end resonance. And then the back and side woods vary, vastly depending on the models you pick and the tone. But really, it's going to be the tops that are kind of determining your amp-like sound, I would say.
I was going to hop in here just because John is asking a question right now. How do wood types influence the tone? Is it compatible to a steel string?
Yeah, so I would say it's fairly comparable to a steel string in the same way. The one thing I would speak to is that in a nylon string, it almost matters slightly more. The reason being because there is less tension to those strings. How thin your wood is and how strong your wood is when it's thinner is going to matter almost a little bit more. So similar, if you're thinking about a cedar top versus a spruce top, or a mahogany back and sides versus a rosewood back and sides for a steel string guitar, it'll be pretty similar in the tonality that you hear. We like to say that a mahogany guitar back and sides is going to be a little bit warmer, a little bit more mellow, whereas a rosewood back and sides guitar is going to be a bit more almost reverb sounding. It kind of has its own reverb to it, a little bit more frequency range response. So it's very similar things that you'll see in the nylon. But once again, I would almost speak to the top mattering slightly more than it would on a steel string guitar, because it is lower tension, it is thinner, and so those woods, the spruce and the cedar, are going to have more drastic tonality differences between them on a nylon.
Nice. Ben is asking, could you provide a link to the artist demo that you just saw? I thought it was a great video. I believe you can find it on their YouTube. I'm assuming. So head over there after the video. And also thoughts on solid body or silent guitars?
We have a lot of thoughts on those, and I will kind of leave it at that for now.
All right. Well, looking at Cordoba's instruments as a whole, is there a single design element that runs through all Cordoba instruments? Because I think they look fantastic.
Yeah, and it's really going to be the traditional classical style build, the traditional Spanish style development that really started all of it is seen all the way through our models. Whether you're getting a $200 Cordoba guitar or a $4,000 Cordoba guitar, all of them are all based from the thread of classical nylon string construction based on the Spanish style, and really bringing out the best voices from all the master luthiers that we've learned from over this time. So it's really going to be, that common thread is the focus on traditional building style at the start, which then evolves into modern playability once we look at the different features that we add on. But we do start, whether it's a fusion guitar, a master series guitar, any of our models, we do start from the beginning looking at where did the nylon string come from and what did we learn in the way that it was initially designed, and then what we can take from that and add on to it to make it ready for a modern player.
Nice. Well, going back to the Fusion 5, I know we're hopping around a little bit. I like to ask this question. Was there a specific inspiration or a specific artist that you had in mind? Because sometimes when you're either creating a song or making an instrument or designing a system or whatever it is, you're like, oh, I wish this player was playing that. Can you talk about what was the initial inspiration, or was there a particular artist in mind when you were designing that?
Yeah, definitely. So I can say there was no specific artist in mind other than pretty much every steel string and electric guitarist. We were thinking of you guys. That's what this Fusion 5 model is all about. It was taking a nylon string model, a guitar that's ready to go for someone who's used to steel string and electric, and really find out what you can get out of a nylon that you haven't been able to get out of your steel string or electric guitar.
Nice. Well, I guess we're getting very close to running out of time. Let's see. Is there another question here? Oh, is there a reason why most nylons have a long square bridge?
Yeah, it's actually going to be the placement. Placement is number one of the bridge. You'll notice we have 12 and 14 fret if you look at our fusion line. The placement is key. If you look at where that bridge is, it's sitting right in the center of that lower bout. So you can kind of see it on this guitar behind me here, where it's sitting almost center to the lower bout right here. And that's because that area of the top has the most movement. It has the most area to move. So by placing the bridge there, you're getting the most vibration out of the top. And then second, the reason for it being so long is that it actually helps to transfer the vibration from this saddle across the top of this wide open plane.
Nice. I have one last question for you, and this may be a secret one, but what's next for Cordoba?
Many things. We've got a lot in the works. All I can say is be sure to watch our launches next year, and we've got a lot of time and development to go still with Fishman on a couple projects.
That's awesome. Well, I have all three of you guys on the screen. Rob Ketch, Josh Chapman from Cordoba. Thank you so much. Today was a great live stream. We don't have any more time. We ran out of time, but I think it was great having you. This was very informative. Rob, would you like to add anything?
I just want to say thank you to Josh and thank you to Cordoba for joining us today. I learned a lot about nylon string guitar, and really appreciate you taking the time, Josh. Thank you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for having me here, guys. It's been a pleasure.
You bet.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us during the Fishman Partner Series. We are going to be here every day at 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please do us a favor, head over to the Fishman YouTube right here. Oops, sorry, right there. Just click the subscribe button, head over to our channel, set your notifications. Just don't miss out on any of our events. We have a lot of great partners coming up in the next 2 months, and tomorrow we'll be here with Schecter. So guys, thank you so much for watching, and my name's Ken Susi, and we'll see you next time.